Welcome back to the Deliberate Exchange. For those of you who haven't listened before, my name is Chelsea. I'm otherwise known as the Deliberate One, and I'm going to do another off the cuff stream of consciousness with a theme type of episode. As I have said in the last one that I did of these, it makes me nervous. It makes me feel a little out of sorts, but it's also a really exciting idea that I want to keep improving upon, which is why I'm doing it again. And so what was kind of going through my head, it was something that I saw on Instagram, and I think it was the Iron Cowboy who said, like, they didn't wake up one day and just start being this person who runs all these marathons and does all these like wild things. He woke up one day and decided he wanted something different, and then filled in all the little pieces along the way. And so I want to talk about what my life was like before in contrast to what it is now, because there is a contrast. I've definitely come a long way. And I think it really helps to show you where you can be and where you can exist, and in the small incremental moves that you make, where you can end up going. So we'll start with the before. I say BC, before Chelsea, before this Chelsea rather. So in like this whole journey of mine really started in 2020 when I started changing my relationship with alcohol, and I started really diving into health and wellness and trying to heal, like as if it was my job. Before that, when I was working full-time in commercial construction, I put so much weight on my identity being the one who was like a really great employee, the one who worked the hardest. I wanted the accolades for being in the office first thing in the morning. I wanted the accolades for working hard and like going to events at night. Like I wanted all this recognition and validation from all these external sources. And there was even before we got to like that point, when I was in my first marriage and, fresh out of college, and I'm working, I'm not taking care of myself. Like I'm just kind of like going through check boxes. Like I had a very definitive idea of what I should be doing as like the next thing. You graduate from college, you get a good job, and you start working at that. You find a good guy, you marry him, and you do the marriage part. You get a house and you keep trying to get a bigger house. You get a car, you get a better car. And I kept like measuring my life by those standards, and really not a lot of substance. Yes, I traveled. Yes, I, would read books, but like it was really surface level. I did some cool stuff in between there. Like I took up boxing for a number of years and became an amateur boxer, and I actually competed and retired undefeated. But that was like the extent of my health and like fitness regime. Like I was working out to train for boxing, very specific. Like the intention and the goal was to work out to get better and get better conditioning for boxing, not for overall and total health. Whereas now my intention is very much like, how do I become like the healthiest version of myself? How do I set myself up for the next 10 years? And even, like after long, grueling training sessions in boxing, like I would go to the restaurant, I would eat, restaurant food, and we'd typically have a beer or some wine, like all the things that right in today's day for me makes me shake my head. And I also wasn't like, I don't think in hindsight, really keen on feedback, either from my husband at the time or from work. I was very ego driven. If I did receive any kind of negative feedback, I would internalize it or I would react. I would think that everything is my fault. And I really didn't have the communication skills to work through anything. And neither did my first husband. So it's not surprising that the marriage ended up breaking down. And I can recall my coping mechanisms in the last like year and a half of marriage, we'll call it. There was a lot of silence. There was a lot of wine. And there's a lot of puzzling. I can remember that very clearly because I didn't want to deal with the conversations. I didn't want to deal with the same rhetoric that was happening between my ex-husband and I when he would come in the door every night. So I would just sit down at the dining room table with a puzzle, with my headphones in and a glass of wine, and I would just listen to music and puzzle. So I didn't have to deal with the silence that would have otherwise been present between my husband and I at the time. Like, that is not a way to live. That is like avoidance 101. But it was all that I was capable of doing at the time. And I'll preface everything that I'm saying, like anything that I've done before and anything that you might have done in the past to get by, to survive, you were operating the best that you knew how to with the tools that you had been given. And where the work that I do really comes in is like when you start learning that there is a different way and you move from like the pragmatic, okay, I understand that this is something that I should be doing, and then how to implement it. Like you can take the knowledge as being really important and then the action being the total power of that equation. And so the marriage dissolves. And even in that, like I didn't have strong communication skills to be willing to say the words, I want to separate, I want to divorce. I can remember being very sullen and withdrawn. Again, like avoiding the hard conversations with my ex-husband. And we got into some kind of like fight or not fight. And he was the one that said, like, do you want to separate? And that was like, finally, like I had pushed him enough that he had to say it, which was great. I didn't have to take any responsibility for saying those words and causing like the initial damage. But it was always my damage to inflict. And so we go through the separation, we go through with the divorce, we go through with selling our house. It was really hard. It was really sad. And we separated in October and ended up selling our house in December. And I remember I took every opportunity that I could to stay out of the house. I would go to all the events in the industry, out with friends, drinking, avoiding, because I didn't want to deal with the sad look on his face. I didn't want to deal with the emptiness that I felt walking in that door. I didn't want to deal with the heartache I was experiencing and that I had caused with him, with our dog, and like even parceling up all of our stuff. Like it was sad. And so I wanted nothing to do with it. I think that today's Chelsea would have been like willing to call a spade and to acknowledge with my ex-husband that like, you know, this is happening and this is hard and this is sad. But it's also the very right thing to do. And perhaps that would have been a little bit of a softer transition period, if you will. So that's what I can kind of remember of like, you know, 2015 to 2017, in the period where like I felt the marriage was dissolving. And like I said before that, when I was just like all about checking boxes. So it was like 2016-ish that I'm starting to wake up a little bit and think like, is there a little bit more to life? As cheesy as that sounds. But I had this yearning for something more, especially from myself. But I didn't know how to put those, things together yet. So I get divorced. I move out on my own, and it's not like I made it my job to start going inward and doing healing and grieving the marriage and all that kind of stuff. I went head first into like party mode. I was sowing the oats that I felt like I didn't have an opportunity to do in college. I was hell bent on having a good time. I thought it was sophisticated to, be able to have wine with dinner. Not that we didn't have wine with dinner with my ex-husband, but like there was like another level to it, like being this cool single girl who had this really good job and was really good at it, living on her own in the city, having wine after work, or going out and having a really good time. Again, not ever dealing with like health, wellness, emotionally, physically, mentally, like just bypassing all of that. And I can see where there were points where like, the wheels were starting to come a little bit loose, a little bit shaky, but I wasn't doing anything about it. I would go through spurts of like working out like a fiend because like I felt like I was, heavy or looking pudgy or whatever that was. I would go like join a gym, do it for a little bit, fall off, go through salad only phases, fall off, all the while I'm still drinking. And like, no wonder I'm not losing any weight because I'm drinking wine, drinking beer, and really not doing much in the form of, movement. And also like the job is stressful and I'm, probably at that point, like really starting to accumulate a lot of cortisol, a lot of adrenaline, and I'm not doing anything to discharge that. So it's not surprising that with the way that I was living, which was burning both candles or burning the candle at both ends and not eating properly. Like I would get up in the morning, I'd have coffee, maybe I would grab a bagel from the Starbucks or from the Tim Hortons. But I would fuel myself with coffee alone. And it's no surprise that I started having panic attacks. And I remember the first panic attack that I had just finished a meeting at the Air Canada Centre, downtown Toronto. I had parked just south of there. And so like I leave the meeting, I'm literally waiting for the light to change to walk. And I start to feel like off, like really like quite quickly. And as I start crossing through the intersection, like it's starting to build. My heart is racing. I'm having trouble keeping up with my breath. I'm starting to panic because like I think I'm having a heart attack, which is what a lot of people kind of describe these moments as. Like I don't actually know what's happening, and I know that I'm about to explode in a way. So I run the rest of the way to my car and I get in there, and thank goodness for really dark tinted windows in my car. I lose it. I'm hyperventilating. I am wailing. I am inconsolable. Like I'm sure that the people that were walking by my car could hear the sounds that I was making, and I didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know breath work. I didn't know that this was a panic attack. I didn't know why it had come on all of a sudden. I didn't know. And I remember calling one of my buddies at the time, Kyle, and like after the biggest, like the most intense part of that storm had passed, I called him and was able to kind of talk a little bit rationally about like what was happening and tell him like I just had like some kind of event. But I was in that car in that parking lot for probably 2.5 hours by myself. Kyle on the phone for a little bit, but like just like what the fuck just happened? And of course, like now I know that was a panic or an anxiety attack, and I could have used breath work in that time to calm down, but like I just white knuckled it and endured how that felt. And it was awful. Like it was so isolating and so almost shameful in a way, because what was I doing? Like I'm not a mess like that. I keep things together. This is weak. Like, I shouldn't be breaking down like I just did. So again, when I look back and like what I was eating, what I wasn't doing to take care of myself, to regulate my stress, it's not a surprise that I had that kind of episode after a high stakes meeting with, Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment. Not surprising. You can't fuel yourself with coffee and not take care of yourself and then wonder like, what was that all about? And again, like, I'm still drinking, so I was probably dealing with a little bit of anxiety, even though like I felt like my drinking was moderate at the time. But all these things, like all the things that I wasn't doing, again, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, even just like the nervous system piece, like I wasn't taking care of myself. I would get little ideas of what I wanted to do, and then I would start very meagerly putting some wheels in motion, then I would fall off because I wasn't ready for the concerted effort, the long-term effort that it would take to get to be in a position of like who I am and what I do and how I feel today. And so like the before Chels is definitely somebody who didn't have her priorities and her values and her standards and expectations set out. She was floundering in that. How could I have any of those in place, like, if I wasn't trying to take care of myself at the very basic level by drinking enough water, by not over consuming alcohol or coffee, by putting good food into my body instead of shit restaurant food or fast food, whatever that is. It's like, of course I'm not going to be like the top shelf Chelsea that I thought that I would. And then it starts to break down in other areas. Like, I'm more snappy with my mom, trying to get through like the final divorce stuff with my ex-husband. Like, I'm snapping at so many different opportunities. I remember having one conversation with like a tax lady and like screaming at her on the phone because like she needed something from my ex-husband. And I just thought that was absolutely audacious. I couldn't keep my shit together. And I know that I wore my emotions and my feelings like a heart on my sleeve. People knew in the office if I was having a bad day or if I was in a bad mood. I was flippant. I was rude, especially to people that were under me or subtrades. Like, I remember being on phone calls and screaming at subtrades who I felt were not performing as they should. Like, all of these behaviors like are not in congruence with who I wanted to be and certainly who I was at my core. But like, they were still coming up, and it was like I couldn't even stop it. It was like a train wreck or a car crash happening. Like, all of a sudden, like, I'm having these outbursts and I would feel so much shame and so much like exhaustion because I had let it get to that point. And I thought like, I know better. You don't treat people like that. You don't act like that. But I didn't have any other ways of dealing with the overwhelming stress, anxiety, depression, grief that I was experiencing. Like, I didn't know. And so when 2020 comes along and I start to really make a concerted effort, I started with the baby steps. Changing my relationship with alcohol was most definitely a pivotal point to everything happening, because like, if I can give up this one really hard thing that's so entrenched in our society, then it will surely make everything easier. And that's absolutely fact in my estimation. And I started making it my priority to move every day, whether it was a long walk or running. Like, I became a runner for, I think, the first year that I had quit drinking because I needed an outlet. I needed to just keep my body moving. I started consuming as much as I could of like anything that came across my radar. Like, I found Wim Hof and his style of breathing, which led me to cold therapy. And so I kept on with the cold therapy and I kept on with the breathing exercises to a certain extent. I got into the TBM universe, which is to be magnetic, and started doing like deep hypnosis to uncover like childhood wounds. I'm trying to meditate every day. I'm journaling. I'm like Googling like how to improve my life. These are all the things that I'm doing. But it starts working. Like I start feeling better every day, just a little bit more and a little bit more. And like the weight is starting to lift. And I kept putting and trying different things, or putting one foot in front of the other, and kept trying different modalities to see what worked, because like I didn't know. Like, you know, TBM was great for a time, wasn't for me. Wim Hof method was great for a time, and then like I found something like a little bit softer but still impactful. Cold therapy was good for 5.5 years, and then like I've kind of tapered off of like the cold plunging every day. So it was always like fine tuning what works and checking in with myself, like what feels good. And that became the baseline. And sitting down and doing the exercises that seemed, if somebody was to give me an exercise like figuring out what your values are in 2016, I would have thought you're an idiot. Like, I don't have time for this shit. I know what my values are. I did not know what my values are. So even sitting down to do simple things and exercises like that, and the internet is beautiful for this, like to figure out who I was at my core, what I wanted. And this was helping me getting out of the checking boxes kind of life I was living. I'm no longer doing things because society says, oh, guess what? Your next step should be this. It was, what is my next step that feels best for me, that feels most in alignment, that's going to get me closer to this feeling that I want to be and feel every single day. And then I started doing everything that would fall under that umbrella. Like to change your life, to change your way of being, to change the things that you don't love doesn't require drastic, sweeping changes. Sometimes it does. Alcohol is a drastic, sweeping change for a lot of people. But it is in the incremental parts that you do in your everyday. Quitting drinking was something that I gave up, and then learning how to live and learning how to fill my time was quite another experience and learning curve that I had to go through. And again, being able to build on those principles of quitting drinking and unlearning the conditioned behaviors and learning a new way of being has all been instrumental in anything else, literally anything else that I wanted to undertake. Even the energy that I put into drinking, right? Making sure that I, stock up for the weekend, or if I'm going away for the weekend, making sure you have enough booze for like the after party, making sure you have Pedialyte for the morning with a Robaxacet with some Tylenol to make sure that you're staving off the headache. Or if you're going to a conference in Chicago, making sure you're booking an IV drip so you can keep drinking, because it's always late nights and lots of drinking. Like, that was the preparation that I was doing to take care of myself, air quotes. Versus now, I can use that energy that I spent into prepping for drinking and or hangover time into how can I take care of myself, right? It's slow mornings. It's making sure I meditate and do my breath work and stream of consciousness, journaling, a gratitude practice. It's taking time in the middle of my day to recenter, because, there's lots of moving parts happening, and I can, get a little away from center. And so I have a little breath practice that I go back to at like in the middle of the day, or go outside, put my feet in the grass, go walk the dog, work out, move my body, lift heavy things, go to yoga. At night, making sure that I take time to like check in with myself. Like, what am I proud about that I've done today? What made me feel really good? What can I do better tomorrow? And again, a little more breath work. You're maybe beginning to see a theme. So all of that is just energy that I've taken from planning drinking into now my new health and wellness life. And then it's added with like a little bit more fulfillment. I talked about in 2015 or 2016, whatever that was, when I wanted more, but I didn't know what that was. the inherent, I want to say need, but maybe that's not the right word, but the drive to help other people, and specifically women, from not going down the same path as I did with drinking or with not dealing with stress or not dealing with anxiety. Like, that's the driver. Like, how can I help women? And that's a large part of the work that I do, and what lights me up when I have my calls with She Walks Canada, and when I have my client calls, and how I can see the help that I'm providing and the change that I'm making. That fulfills my soul. And that was something that was drastically missing from my life before. So the life that I have now didn't just happen overnight. It was built in a series of decisions and choices and intentions that got me to this point. But first I had to think about, okay, what kind of person do I want to be? And what does that person do to make that all happen? And then just start filling it in, trying things on, see what works, see what doesn't, but you have to try. You can't just wish that you can be a certain way and then get all pissy about it because it didn't happen or it's not happening fast enough. It is a process, but it actually requires action. So I think I've rambled on enough. I would love to hear from you on this episode. What resonated? Like, did parts of my story kind of like feel familiar? Did you want to understand more about different parts of the journey that I've been on, or the modalities that I've undertaken, or how certain things felt? Please send me a message. I'd be happy to kind of fill in those blanks or cover that on a future episode. I really appreciate you listening as I'm kind of curating and making this podcast into something that is helpful and valuable for you as you navigate building something that's a little more intentional, a little bit more you. Of course, share this episode, like, review, subscribe, and in the meantime, breathe it in, be deliberate, and please be good to yourself.